pleasant day, fellow wanderers. In this video, you will see and learn a basic knowledge and ideas about astronomy.
That will correct some of your daily misconceptions on what you see in the sky every day and every night.
Do you ever wonder why solar and lunar eclipse happens? Or even asked yourself what may be the cause of this astronomical event? In this part of video, you will learn and understand more how eclipses are formed and when will a solar and lunar eclipses occur. So, let's get this started. An eclipse is an astronomical event that occurs when an astronomical object is temporarily obscured by passing into the shadow of another heavenly body or by having another body pass between it and the viewer. There are two types of eclipses on Earth. An eclipse of the moon, or what we called lunar eclipse, and an eclipse of the sun, or what we called solar eclipse. This alignment of three celestial objects is known as a syzygy. Now, we will discuss the types of solar and lunar eclipse. Let's start with the solar eclipse. A solar eclipse can only happen on new moon, when the sun is covered by the moon. There are four types of solar eclipses: partial solar eclipse, annular solar eclipse, total solar eclipse, and hybrid eclipse. Interesting, right? First, the partial solar eclipse. In a partial solar eclipse, the moon crosses the path of the sun, but does not completely block it out. The umbral shadow of the moon misses the Earth, and only its penumbral shadow hits us. We end up seeing a sun that looks like a bite has been taken out of it. Next, the annular solar eclipse. An annular solar eclipse is from the word annulus, occurs when the moon completely covers the center of the sun, but it leaves the edges uncovered. There is a bright ring of the sun still visible in these cases. The other is the total solar eclipse. When the moon covers the sun, you get a total solar eclipse. Since the moon is many times smaller than the sun, a total eclipse can only occur when its orbit falls very close to the Earth. In a total eclipse, you get to see the sun's stunning corona. A hybrid solar eclipse is the last type of solar eclipse, but it is a relatively rare event. A hybrid solar eclipse happens when one part of the Earth sees an annular eclipse, while another part of the Earth sees a total eclipse. Now, we will have different types of lunar eclipse. A lunar eclipse can only occur on a full moon when the moon passes through a portion of Earth's shadow. There are three types of a lunar eclipse: total lunar eclipse, partial lunar eclipse, and penumbral lunar eclipse. First is the total lunar eclipse. A total lunar eclipse happens when the entire moon passes through Earth's shadow. You get a total lunar eclipse. The effects are especially striking, as often the moon will look like it has taken on a red color. Next is the partial lunar eclipse. In a partial lunar eclipse, a portion of the moon passes through Earth's umbral shadow. Visible to the naked eye, you'll see that part of the moon looks like it's in total darkness. The last one is the penumbral lunar eclipse. The penumbral lunar eclipse is challenging to spot. A penumbral eclipse is when the moon passes through Earth's penumbral shadow.
Do you know that there is a vast amount of rocks and debris floating around in space? Approximately 100 tons of it falls to Earth every day. You might have been lucky enough to have seen this happen as to what we know a shooting star. But, do you ever wonder what a shooting star is? Is it a comet? An asteroid? Or maybe a meteoroid? This video will learn the difference between a comet, an asteroid, and a meteoroid. Also, we'll be discussing what a meteor and meteorite are. So let's get started. First, what is a comet? A comet or a dirty snowball is essentially a ball of ice, rock, and dust that orbits the sun. Its size ranges from 1 kilometer to 20 kilometers. Many astronomers believe they are leftovers from the early formation of the solar system that resides in one of the two places on the solar system's very outskirts. The Kuiper Belt and the Oort cloud. These two areas are made up of small icy bodies of frozen gas such as methane, ammonia, nitrogen, and water, mixed with rocks and dust. Usually, a comet's orbit will be altered by a gravitational tug of another large object, or through a collision with another body that can send it into the inner solar system. Sometimes, even directly to the sun. Next, what is an asteroid? Asteroids are small, rocky objects that orbit the sun. Although asteroids orbit the sun like planets, they are much smaller than planets. Asteroids were also leftovers from our solar system's formation when a giant cloud of gas and dust collapsed. When this happened, most of the material fell to the cloud center and formed the sun. Some of the condensing dust in the cloud became planets. The objects in the asteroid belt never had the chance to be incorporated into planets. They are leftovers from that time long ago when planets formed. There are lots of asteroids in our solar system. Most of them live in the central asteroid belt. The asteroid belt is a region between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter. Asteroids hang out in other places too. For example, some asteroids are found in the orbital path of planets. This means that the asteroid and the planet follow the same direction around the Sun. Earth and a few other planets have asteroids like this. Now, we'll talk about the meteor, meteorite, and meteoroid and what their differences are. Let's differentiate them in one process to make it easy to understand. Meteoroids are objects in space that range in size from dust grains to small asteroids. Think of them as space rocks, and, when this space rock or meteoroids enter Earth's atmosphere, or any other planet's atmosphere at high speed and burn up, the fireballs or what we know as shooting stars are called meteors. Lastly, when a meteoroid survives a trip through the atmosphere and hits the surface or ground, it's called a meteorite. This video will learn about how the planet is formed and the two categories of that planet. Do you ever wonder how planets have been created? The universe is composed of countless galaxies, but each galaxy contains a collection of stars. And each of the stars, including the Sun, has numerous natural satellites revolving around the solar system are known as planets. But how does it form? The nebular hypothesis is a widely accepted theory for how the Sun and planets are formed. It all started with a giant cloud of dust. Gases in space are called the nebula, and began to be active when the luminous stellar explosion is known as the supernova reached the nebula and become a solar nebula. The solar nebula begins to form an accretion disk, where the gravity pulls everything towards the center with the speed of rotation is increased. This causes the cloud to flat. Eventually, it gets warm during the increasing pressure. As the mass further increases, gravity also increases as the temperature rises. The matter continues to collect as the growing force of gravity towards the center. A ball of hot gas was formed, in the center of the accretion disk, creating a protostar also known as our Sun. When the hot ball gets enough gas gathered in the protostar center, the pressure generated enough heat to fuse the atoms. Outside the stars, matters are forming, plumes of gas, rocks, and dust, creating a protoplanet. These planets continue to grow as they trap and gather materials nearby to them. Because the protoplanets also formed from the same cloud of gas and dust, they travel around the Sun in the same directions and then on the same plane. The nebular hypothesis also explained how many planets are range. The heat of the solar wind swept the lighter gases farther out in the developing solar system. That is why the rocky planets orbited near the Sun, and the giant gaseous planets formed in the colder region of the solar system. What are the two categories of planets in the solar system? Revolving around the Sun are 8 planets: Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. They were divided into 2 categories based on their composition: the terrestrial planet and the Jovian planet. The terrestrial planets, including Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars, they are called the inner planets because they are much closer to the Sun, or the rocky planets because they are rocky and solid, and composed of iron core and a silicate mantle. But in astronomy, they are called terrestrial planets because they are Earth-like. The terrestrial planets have no ring system, and it has a few moons. Which one moon to planet Earth? And 2 moons to planet Mars. The inner planets are much more closer to the Sun. The elements are revolving near the Sun are formed into concrete, and others were vaporized by extreme heat exerted by the Sun. While gravity pulls the denser components like rocks inwards, causes the light gases to escape from the inner solar system to the outer planets. The Jovian planets are composed of gas giants Jupiter and Saturn, and the ice giants are Uranus and Neptune. These Jovian planets are massive, all have their ring system and has numerous moons. It has no solid surface, and it is composed of hydrogen, helium, and methane. In Jupiter and beyond, in the colder region, planets have their different compositions formed of the temperature where water and other elements could freeze. Jovian planets are called the gas giants because of their gravity to attract the lightest elements such as hydrogen and helium, and other massive objects. The amount of heat exerted by the Sun is not enough to vaporize the most lightweight aspects. Maybe some of you are confused about why Pluto is not recognized as a planet anymore. There are 3 qualifications to be classified as a planet. 1. A planet must orbit around the Sun. 2. Planets must be spherical. 3. Clear neighborhood. Pluto cannot clear its nearby object other than its satellite. Unlike the 8 planets using gravity to sweep away the asteroids and dwarf planets out of their path, Pluto cannot sweep away other objects around its way, resulting in collisions of the Pluto and the other items in the Kuiper belt. And because of that, Pluto doesn't recognize as a planet anymore because it failed on the 3rd qualification to be a planet.
Constellation is a neighborhood on the celestial sphere. A group of stars forms a perceived outline or patterns representing an animal, mythological person or creature, or inanimate objects. From the Latin base, ceo meaning together with, and stella meaning star, and constellation, meaning a group of stars. Constellation is like a blueprint in the sky, together with billions of stars throughout the night and scattered across the universe. But how many constellations do we have? There are 88 recognized constellations by the L. And 12 of them are zodiacs. And why they are called a zodiac and what is the meaning of it? Because zodiacs cross the ecliptic path the Sun passes through, based on our perspective here on Earth. Some are confused about why are stars and constellations moving? All we see in the night sky change its position throughout the year. Earth is spinning in its axis, moving east to west, as the Earth continues on its path around the Sun. Different constellation becomes visible at night as the Sun passing in the daytime.